So let us continue our discussion further on instrumental methods of analysis. While giving the introduction to instrumental methods of analysis, I have pronounced about the electroanalytical methods. So out of several instrumental methods, electroanalytical methods are the key methods in order to subject samples of any origin, such as environmental origin or pharmaceutical origin or biological origin, or the samples which are going to be handled in forensic science laboratory or pollution control board, wherever it is. Electroanalytical methods are also going to play very, very important role. So we know you keep on performing pH metric titrations, potentiometric titrations, even conductometric titrations. These are important analytical methods or methodology you are going to adapt in performing pH metric titration or potentiometric titration or conductometric titration. The electrical property of the analyte is going to be encased. So we will be encapsulating the concentration or the quantity or the amount of the analyte present in the sample, which is under investigation. Sample is nothing but that is the system under study or system under investigation. Sample system we are going to subject for analysis. So the analytical process is going to utilize the sample in which we are going to determine either the volume or amount or quantity or concentration, whatever it is. So you will be using pH metric titrations more commonly, and even you will be also performing potentiometric titrations more commonly in your day-to-day laboratory practice. So these two methods, these two titrometric methods are solely belonging to the electroanalytical methods. So apart from these two, including conductometric method, are there any other such techniques which will be coming under electroanalytical methods? This question is going to be arised more commonly. And the answer should be yes. Under electroanalytical techniques, there are many other methods are also coming. And in the forthcoming classes, after completion of the discussion on potentiometric titrations are the advantages, applications, and other aspects of potentiometric methods, you are going to understand, you are going to study the principle theory, working principle and working theory, applications and instrumentation part of other electroanalytical techniques too. So, what are electroanalytical methods? Understanding the definition is very, very essential. Electroanalytical methods are a group of quantitative methods. More commonly, the electroanalytical methods are going to be employed only for the quantification process. And less commonly, say for example, polarographic or cyclic voltammetric techniques, they will be coming in future discussions. They will be used less commonly in order to identify the species also. But we can say the electroanalytical methods are seldom used for qualitative analysis, but majorly the electroanalytical methods are going to be employed for quantitative analysis. Two important requirements are there in order to perform the quantitative analysis by means of electroanalytical methods. More importantly, the electrochemical cell is required. So we will be performing the analysis by utilizing the electrochemical cell, and by means of or by using the electrochemical cell, we are going to analyze the sample which is containing the analyte. What is the amount of the analyte present in the sample is going to be determined by utilizing the principle of electrochemical theory and by employing these electroanalytical methods. So more commonly and typically, the electroanalytical methods are classified into three types. So number one is, in the first class, the electroanalytical methods are put under this particular class, and in which there is the existence of the relationship between the concentration of the analyte and the electrical parameter of the analyte, what we are going to measure. So what are those electrical parameters? They are potential, current, resistance or conductance, capacitance, or the charge. Quantity of electricity is also called as charge. So we will be measuring the generated potential, we will be measuring the generated current, we will be recording the resistance or conductance, and even it is also possible to record the capacitance, quantity of electricity or charge. With respect to the amount, with respect to the values of what we have recorded, there is a direct existence of the relationship between the property, the electrical property, what we have recorded, and the concentration of the analyte present in the sample. So, dependent upon this relationship, this direct relationship, this first class is proposed, and in which the direct relationship between the concentration of the analyte and the electrical properties exists. Under the second category, we are going to perform a titration such as pH metric titration or potentiometric titration or conductometric titration or amperometric titrations, etc. The electrical parameters are going to be utilized in order to stop the titration because we need to know the end point of a titration. In the visual titrations, what we will be doing, we will be using an auxiliary substance as a chemical indicator. And the change in color of the chemical indicator is going to tell us where to stop the titration. So like that, the end point of a titration while performing the electroanalytical methods will be coming to know by means of these electrical properties. There may be sudden change in the potential of the solution. There may be sudden change in the conductance of the solution. There may be sudden change in the pH of the solution. And similarly, there may be rapid change in the current generated. There may be change in the resistance or capacitance. All these change in electrical property at the point of completion of the chemical reaction can be utilized in order to say if the end point has been arrived. All these type of electroanalytical techniques are put under second class. So in this particular class, amperometric titrations will be coming, conductometric titrations will be coming, potentiometric or pH metric titrations are also coming. And in another type of electroanalytical method, this is a very important electroanalytical method in which the analyte present in the sample solution, which is present in the liquid state, and that we are going to convert it into variable form. Just like what we will be doing in a gravimetric estimation, we will be converting the sample or analyte present in the solution into a residue, variable residue, or a precipitate, and that precipitate is going to be ignited. That means to say that at last we will be ending up with a solid. What is the amount of the solid obtained we are going to weigh, and the weight of the product obtained is directly proportional to the analyte present in the sample. The same principle is going to be utilized here, but we will encast the electrical properties such as current and voltage. And by applying the required voltage and the current, we will be converting the analyte present in the sample in the liquid state into the solid state. And that solid analyte will be made to deposit over the cathode or the anode. Then the weight of that particular species deposited onto the cathode and the anode in electrogravimetry, and this is a typical type of electroanalytical technique in which the analyte is going to be converted into variable form by means of electrical current and the voltage. So therefore, these are the three important class of electroanalytical methods. And in the first class, there is a direct relationship between the concentration of the analyte and the electrical parameter of the analyte. What we are going to measure will be existing. And in the second class, the electrical property is going to be encast in order to find out the end point of the titration. And in the third class, the analyte present in the sample solution is going to be converted into solid state by application of the potential and the electric current. So these are the three important electroanalytical techniques. Basically, whenever you are handling the electrochemical cells, we will be come up with the two important types of electrochemical cells, and they are galvanic cells and electrolytic cells. So galvanic cells are also called as voltaic cells. So what is the meaning of galvanic cell? You assume a chemical reaction A plus B gives rise to P, A plus B gives rise to P. So a spontaneous chemical reaction, which is going to be reversible, is going to be taking place between A and B. A and B are the two chemical species, which are two reactants. And there is spontaneous reaction going to be taken place between two chemical species to produce product P or product C and D, and assume this reaction is going to be reversible. So if we employ the electrochemical cell, if we employ the electrochemical cell with the aim of producing the electrical energy, the aim is to produce the electrical energy. Why do we produce the electrical energy? Because there is a spontaneous chemical reaction is occurring between the two species. So The electrochemical cell which is used in order to perform a chemical reaction and consequently to produce the electrical energy, and these electrochemical cells are called as galvanic cells or voltaic cells. So a chemical reaction going to be occur spontaneously in order to produce the electrical energy in the electrochemical cells, and these electrochemical cells are called as galvanic cells. Say for example, lead storage battery or ordinary flashlight battery, everyday flashlight batteries you will be using. So where the chemical components are present inside the batteries, the chemical reaction is going to be taken place between the chemical components which are present inside the battery. So that chemical reaction spontaneously going to be occurred between those two spaces, and therefore the electrical energy is going to be produced, and these type of cells are called as galvanic cells or voltaic cells. You just assume this diagram what I have presented here. You take two beakers. Into one beaker you fill copper sulfate solution, and into another beaker you fill zinc sulfate solution. Into copper sulfate solution you immerse copper rod, and into zinc sulfate solution you immerse zinc rod. A simple zinc rod you take, and you immerse the zinc rod into zinc sulfate solution and copper rod into copper sulfate solution. In order to perform the chemical reaction between copper sulfate and zinc sulfate solution, you need the interconnection between these two solutions. How do we do this? We will be doing this by means of a salt bridge. So salt bridge is an U-shaped glass tube that will be containing saturated solution of KCl or agarose, whatever. So that salt bridge has been used to initiate the interaction between copper sulfate and the zinc sulfate. So once the salt bridge is introduced, there is a chemical reaction is going to be taken place between copper and zinc. So you know what are the common classical chemical reactions going to be occur between two electrolytes. So because of the chemical reaction going to be happen between copper sulfate and zinc sulfate, there is a generation of the electrical energy, and that electrical energy can be seen by looking at the generated the voltage or glowing up of the bulb, whatever it is. Let us see this in the next diagram. In this slide, I have presented a spontaneous chemical reaction between zinc and copper. The diagram which was presented in the previous slide has been elaborated further here in order to make you to understand in a better way about the functioning of galvanic cells. You can see two beakers. One beaker is filled by zinc ion solution and the other beaker is filled by copper ion solution, copper sulfate solution and zinc sulfate solution. So into the zinc sulfate solution, zinc anode or zinc electrode has been immersed, and into copper sulfate solution, copper electrode has been immersed. So you have connected copper cathode into positive terminal of the electrical source, and this electrode into the negative terminal. So there is a salt bridge, KCl salt bridge has been immersed between zinc and copper. Salt bridge has been immersed between zinc and copper. Spontaneous chemical reaction takes place. What are those spontaneous chemical reactions? In this beaker, soon after the initiation of the electrical contact between zinc and copper, this is going to be the reaction taken place. That is, zinc is going to be converted into divalent zinc with a consequent releasing of two electrons. So zinc is going to be converted into divalent zinc as zinc 2 plus with the consequent releasing of two electrons, and simultaneously in this beaker divalent copper has accepted these two electrons in order to get converted into zero copper or elemental copper or metallic copper. So this copper, whatever the copper reduced, and this process is called as reduction and this process is called as oxidation. By means of these two typical chemical reactions, you can easily understand that there is a releasing of electrons in this particular chemical reaction, and this reaction is called as oxidation reaction. Here, the electrons released due to the oxidation at the other off cell of the electrochemical cell, and those electrons have been captured by the divalent copper, whereby divalent copper has been converted into zero copper or a metallic copper or elemental copper, and the copper is going to be deposited into this particular cathode, and the electrode which is used in order to initiate the reduction reaction is called as cathode, and the other electrode which is responsible for the oxidation process is called as anode. So now you have understood in a better way, the chemical reaction is going to be taken place. Due to the oxidation of zinc, the electrons are started to release. Due to the oxidation of zinc, the electrons have been started to release. There is a common principle that due to chemical reaction, whenever the electrons are going to be released, and consequently there is a chances of generation of the current because the electron and the current will be moving in opposite direction. If the electrons are moving in clockwise direction, in the opposite direction, the current will be moving. Current will be moving. So, if you interconnect both the electrodes to the different terminals of a source, different terminal of a source means assume you have used a bulb here because electrons are flowing, current is consequently going to be generated, and due to that generation of the current, bulb will start to glow. And this is the common phenomena and principle involved in working of galvanic cells, working of galvanic cells. And this functioning of the galvanic cell is as a consequence of the two parallel chemical reaction, and these two parallel chemical reactions are going to take place spontaneously in a process called as redox reaction. And the overall redox reaction means the combination of reduction and oxidation reaction can be written as a net reaction. And this reaction is called as redox reaction, in which the oxidation of zinc and reduction of copper taken place to divalent zinc and elemental copper respectively. Zinc is going to be oxidized to divalent zinc and copper 2 plus is going to be reduced to copper. So this spontaneous reaction is going to be taken place. Due to the spontaneity of the chemical reaction, the releasing of the electrons and consequently generation of the electrical energy. And this electrical energy can be seen by glowing of the bulb. This is the common principle you can see in the flash batteries, flashlight batteries or ordinary torch batteries. Let us move on to the electrolytic cells. In contrast to the galvanic cells, the electrolytic cells are other type of electrochemical cells in which the aim is to convert the electrical energy into chemical energy. In galvanic cells, what we will be doing, we will be converting chemical energy into electrical energy. Due to spontaneity of the chemical reaction, rapid chemical reaction takes place between the two reactants, and thereby the generation of the electrical energy, what we have seen in galvanic cell. But here, the electrical energy will be utilized in order to initiate the chemical reaction, or otherwise the chemical reaction is not possible to be taken place. So in order to initiate the chemical reaction, our intention may be different, whether to measure the charge or whether to measure the change in potential or whether to measure the current, whatever it is, whatever it is. The aim may be different, but in order to perform the chemical reaction, we need to apply the electrical energy. So this electrical energy is going to be converted into chemical energy because the electrical energy is going to assist the chemical reaction to be taken place, which may be non-spontaneously or less spontaneously, whatever it is. But the spontaneity we cannot convert with the galvanic cell while using the electrolytic cells as the electrochemical cells in order to perform the chemical reaction. So, as a result, if you look at the definition of these electrolytic cells, they are used to convert the electrical energy into chemical energy. So, their functioning is completely reversed when compared to voltaic cells or galvanic cells. Means the process in electrolytic cells will go in the reverse direction as we have seen in voltaic cell. The reaction is going to be forced between the two reactants by applying the external voltage. We need a power supply device in order to do this. So by means of a power supply device, we are going to apply the external voltage. So due to the application of the external voltage, that is going to be electrical energy, application of the voltage. We are going to apply the voltage to the two different electrodes or the working electrode, whatever it is. So by utilizing the applied voltage, the interconversion of the chemical species is going to be taken place, and whatever the state of a chemical component what we have used in order to apply the electrical energy at last. Say A has been converted into B, or zinc has been converted into zinc 2 plus, or copper 2 has been converted into copper. That's what our aim was. We have to convert zinc 2 to zinc 0 or zinc 0 to zinc 2, copper 2 to copper 0 or copper 0 to copper 2, whatever it is. That was the aim. So the external voltage what we have applied must be greater than and opposite to the spontaneous voltage. Means if we assume a chemical reaction should be taken place spontaneously, and due to spontaneous chemical reaction, there is a generation of the voltage. So whatever the voltage you are going to apply in electrolytic cells, that must be greater and opposite to that spontaneous voltage. Say for example, the electrolysis of water. So let us look at the electrolysis of water later. Let me present the distinction between the galvanic cell and the electrolytic cell here. First, you know the definition. In galvanic cell or voltaic cell, the chemical energy is going to be converted into electrical energy. There is an electrolyte. There are two different electrodes. One will be cathode and other one will be anode. The reaction between the solution present along with the anode and the solution present along with the cathode going to be taken place. So two parallel reactions are going to occur there. One is reduction reaction and other one is oxidation reaction. Due to this parallel redox spontaneous reaction, there is a generation of the electrical energy that could be measured here. Similarly here, we have to apply the voltage in order to initiate the chemical reaction between the two solutions of the two analytes which are present along with anode and cathode. We have to apply the external voltage. See here, power supply device has been used. The circuit has been used. This is a line of electricity into which we have connected the wire. So electrical energy we are going to apply. After the application of the electrical energy, the species present along with the anode and cathode will undergo in the chemical reaction, and the chemical components present in these solutions are going to be converted into some other form. Let us see these reactions in galvanic cell. This is going to be the oxidation reaction. A non-valent Y has been converted into monovalent Y with the consequent releasing up of one electron, or Z plus electron gives rise to Z minus. This is going to be the reduction reaction. The overall reaction is Y plus Z gives rise to Y plus Z minus, where the free energy will be less than 0. Gibbs free energy will be less than 0 here, fundamentally. In contrast to this galvanic cell, you assume here, the oxidation of reaction will be Z minus to Z plus 1 electron, the same species which was present here. Z minus has undergone oxidation in order to release 1 electron, and Y plus which was present here has undergone reduction to produce Y. The overall reaction here is Y plus Z minus gives rise to Y plus Z. Y plus Z minus gives rise to Y plus Z. Here, the change in free energy will be greater than 0. The change in free energy will be greater than 0. Therefore, the functioning of electrolytic cell will be in completely opposite when compared to galvanic cell. Here, the aim is to convert the electrical energy. Here, the aim is to convert the electrical energy into chemical energy. Here we will be expecting the electrical energy. Here we will be expecting the chemical energy. Both will be involving oxidation and reduction reaction, where the species involved in the oxidation and reduction process may reverse in the opposite way in case of electrolytic cell when we compare with the process involved in galvanic cell. So therefore, we can quote that galvanic cells are the electrochemical cells in which the chemical energy is going to be converted into electrical energy. Electrolytic cells are the electrochemical cells in which the electrical energy is going to be utilized in order to convert a chemical species from one form to another form. You assume copper 0 to copper 1, then copper 2. We are able to convert copper 0 to copper 1 and copper 2 with the application of the electrical energy. This process will be done only in electrolytic cell. Similarly, manganese 7 to manganese 6, manganese 4 and manganese 2. So like this, the reduction process can be done by utilizing the electrolytic cell. What is the aim? The aim was to convert manganese 7 to manganese 6, manganese 4 and manganese 2. The chemical species which was having the charge of plus 7 has been converted into manganese 6, manganese 4 and manganese 2. So chemical energy has been obtained. Similarly, copper 2 has been reduced to copper 0. We need copper 0. That's what we are going to utilize the potential difference. We are going to apply the potential energy in order to convert copper 2 to copper 0. Copper 0 is the chemical energy what we are intended to obtain. So electrolytic cells in this direction can be defined as they are the electrochemical cells which are used to convert the electrical energy into chemical energy. You can see this, a simple example, everyday batteries which are available in the market and you will be using more commonly in your house as a household material. You will be using this everyday battery. How this is going to function? You will be astonished if you look at the functioning of this everyday battery. Reduction and oxidation reaction must be commonly taken place, so whatever the battery you are going to use. So this is the overall view of the battery, and this is the cross-sectional view of this everyday battery. So two electrodes are required in order to perform any electrochemical operations. Two electrodes are required. In this battery, two electrodes are used. One is going to be the carbon rod and the other one is going to be the zinc container. So the overall circumference of this battery will be made by zinc, and this zinc is going to act like an anode, and this carbon rod is going to act like a cathode. Carbon rod is cathode and zinc container is an anode. Carbon rod has been immersed into a mixture of manganese dioxide and powdered carbon. This carbon rod, black object, has been immersed into the mixture of manganese dioxide and powdered carbon. This is going to be the species, chemical species responsible in order to involve in the chemical reaction. And after this carbon rod, this zinc container has been given connection with the ammonium chloride paste, which is going to act like a electrolyte. There is a cardboard in order to insulate the external surface. So what happens when the interaction between zinc container and the carbon rod in the presence of manganese dioxide took place? This manganese dioxide will involve in the chemical reaction. Zinc undergo oxidation to get converted into divalent zinc, zinc to divalent zinc. Carbon do not undergo any chemical reaction, but manganese dioxide undergo chemical reaction. As a result of the two parallel chemical reaction between manganese dioxide and zinc, there is a generation of the electrical energy, and that's why the bulb will be glowing. So this is the functioning of this everyday battery. So you will be using carbon rod and zinc container as electrodes. Carbon rod will be the cathode and zinc container will be the anode. Even graphite rod can also be used, cathode and anode. The electrolyte is going to be ammonium chloride, and the chemical energy what we are going to convert is going to be manganese dioxide and powdered carbon. Manganese dioxide will be convertible to other species, other form. So as a result of the chemical reaction between zinc and manganese, there is a glowing up of the bulb, and this is because of the conversion of the chemical energy between manganese and zinc into electrical energy.